There was a time in Britain when a child disappearing underground for 12 hours wasn't shocking. It was normal, even necessary. So how did a country that prided itself on progress come to accept children working in the dark? When we read 19th century mining reports, we're struck by how little surprise there is in the language. Children are listed alongside horses and carts. Heights are measured, loads are weighed, ages are noted briefly as if they're incidental. Our composite figure today is a mine overman, the person responsible for keeping production moving. He's not cruel, he's practical. From his point of view, the mine is a machine and every part has to fit. Coal was Britain's beating heart. It powered homes, factories, railways and ships. Demand didn't pause for childhood. The seams were low, the tunnels narrow. Small bodies fit where adult bodies could not. And once you accept that logic, the rest follows disturbingly easily. Because if coal mattered more than comfort, what mattered more than childhood? We talk about childhood today as if it's a natural state, playful, protected, full of learning. But that idea is relatively new. For most of British history, childhood was short and functional. Children worked on farms, they spun thread, they carried water. Work wasn't exploitation, it was contribution. The overman sees no moral line crossed when a boy opens a ventilation door or a girl haws a cart. They're helping the household survive. And survival is a key word here. For working families, a child's wage, however small, could mean the difference between rent paid and eviction. Hunger didn't wait for adulthood. So when reformers later asked, how could parents allow this? They were asking the wrong question. The better one is, what choice did they think they had? And if families needed the income, who benefited from keeping things exactly as they were? From the mine owner's perspective, child labour wasn't an outrage. It was efficiency. Children were cheaper, more obedient, less likely to organise. They could be paid a fraction of an adult's wage and dismissed just as easily. The overman keeps records. He knows which children are quick, which are reliable, which cry too much in the dark. This isn't villainy, it's management. The state, meanwhile, largely looks away. Mining is dangerous, yes, but danger is seen as part of progress. Britain is building something bigger than individual lives. Industry justifies risk. And so a quiet agreement forms. Children work, families cope, industry thrives, and nobody asks too many questions until someone finally goes underground to look. The turning point doesn't begin with lawmakers. It begins with witnesses, doctors, inspectors, journalists, people who descend into the mines and come back changed. They describe children who have never seen sunlight during winter months, children permanently bent over from hauling loads, children falling asleep at work because 12 hours underground leaves little energy for anything else. The overman appears in these reports too, not as a monster, but as a man doing his job within a system that rewards output, not well-being. For the first time, the public is asked to imagine these children not as workers, but as children. And that shift of imagination more than law is where change begins. But if the suffering was so clear, why didn't reform happen sooner? Every attempt to regulate child labour meets resistance, not just from mine owners, but from politicians who fear precedent. If the state can interfere here, where does it stop? This is a recurring theme in British history. Reform is often delayed not by ignorance, but by anxiety. Who decides what is acceptable? Who pays the cost of change? There's also suspicion of sentimentality. Critics argue that reformers don't understand working life, that they're imposing middle-class values on families who can't afford them. And so reports pile up. Debates drag on. Children keep working. Let me pause here to ask you something. When you think about the state stepping in to protect people, where do you draw the line? Too early? Too late? I'd genuinely like to know what you think. Feel free to pop it in the comments. Because eventually, even Britain decides the line has been crossed. The first real restrictions don't abolish child labour. They limit it. No very young children, shorter hours, some basic safety measures. To us, it feels inadequate. To contemporaries, it feels radical. The Overman now has new rules pinned near the office, age limits to check, hours to log, inspectors who might arrive unannounced. The mine hasn't changed, but the expectations around it have. And something else shifts too, responsibility. Accidents are no longer just fate, they're questions. Could this have been prevented? That idea that harm can be prevented rather than endured is one of the quiet revolutions of modern Britain, which leads to the biggest change of all, redefining what childhood is for. As restrictions tighten, another institution grows in importance, school. If children aren't meant to work all day, they need somewhere else to be. Education becomes not just desirable, but necessary. Childhood is reframed as a time for development, not extraction. The economy adapts slowly to adult labour replacing child labour. The overman eventually retires. His replacement oversees a different workforce. The tunnels are still dark, but fewer children enter them. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Britain didn't stop child labour because it suddenly became compassionate. It stopped because it could afford to. So what does that say about progress and who it leaves behind? When we ask why children could work all day underground, the answer isn't cruelty, it's priority. Coal mattered, survival mattered, growth mattered. Childhood came later. That doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. An explanation matters because it reminds us that moral progress isn't automatic. It follows economics, politics, and pressure. Every generation redraws the boundary of what's acceptable. One day, our own certainties may look just as strange. That's why these stories matter. Not to judge the past, but to recognise how easily necessity can silence conscience. Thanks for walking a little further down the road that made Britain with me. If you liked it, there's a button especially for that down there. And if you liked it and subscribe, there's a whole back catalogue for you to enjoy, including this one that YouTube's chosen especially for you. I think you'll like it. So until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.